welcome to the Open Air Podcast. My name is Devang Desai. We've made it through 1 week of the Australian Open, and to the surprise of no one, it has been shocking, it's been exhilarating, it's been tiring. If you've been staying up as late as we have to watch these matches or getting up early, as I'm now doing, I've realized now that I have to do the go to sleep at 9 p.m. and then wake up at 2:30 in the morning thing. I can't stay up late because drinking coffee at 11 p.m. is no longer a good recipe for me. But with that in mind, and with Simon away, traveling somewhere in Portugal, we brought in a ringer. We brought in the youth as well, who's been able to stay up and who has the will and the courage to watch late into the evening. You know her from her appearance on this show before. You know her from her work at Homestand, her work at the program, her work at the Slice Tennis. It's Crina Mustafa. Welcome, Crina.
Thanks so much for having me. And it's so funny because last year during the Australian Open, I would do the 9 p.m. go to sleep, AM wake-ups. But this year, I don't know. I've just been staying up. I'm managing so far, though.
It's I think the scheduling remaining as poor as it has been. These matches are basically going to like early morning Eastern time here. So like 9 a.m. tennis is still happening, which doesn't feel right. You know, like they should probably stop doing this.
Yeah, and it was funny because during the Andy Murray match, that went well into lunchtime here.
Yeah.
And one of my friends was like, it's about time these Australians had to watch tennis at 4 a.m.
Seriously. We'll talk about Andy. Hell, we'll talk about his performances, the biggest storylines so far on the men's and women's side. Some surprises, some big names out, but I don't think those are the biggest surprises, if that makes sense. But we'll dig into that a bit later. I wanted to start, Crina, with the Canadians, though, because we are both based in Canada. You do a lot of work in Canadian tennis, covering the sport here. We've seen the rise probably beginning before 2019, but once Bianca won a Grand Slam, I think the coverage of the sport changed here, and the magnifying glass on this group of players intensified because the benchmark now is winning these big titles. And even though Masters 1000s or your Indian Wells or your Miamis are big tournaments, I still think only the slams really capture the attention of the wider Canadian public. So with that in mind, even with the time zone change, I think this was going to be a big tournament, Crina, for the Canadian crew. And I think we should judge them on their individual expectations because they all came into this tournament in different forms and with different rankings. And because of those rankings, facing some very tough early roads. But overall, at least in the singles, I think we can say this is a bit disappointing.
Yeah, I think I tend to agree. I was really hoping that we were going to open this episode with a Felix win today, but that didn't happen. And it's funny because I've been able to watch every single one of his matches so far. So I thought, hey, maybe I'm the winning recipe. He wins every time I stay up till 3 a.m. to watch him. But no, that didn't happen this time. But I think, and we'll start with Felix because he did make it the furthest, but I'm somehow the most disappointed in him, if that makes sense. Just because I feel like his level of tennis wasn't really at what he was in like October, November, let's say, going through these couple of rounds. I think one of the biggest things that kind of kept him to get this far was his serve, because he was serving really well. And that's one of his biggest weapons. But I just feel like he was not really forcing his game on his opponents, like especially in the first two rounds where he was letting them take the first set really easily and kind of starting off super slow. And I feel like that kind of hampered him a little bit because as you go through the rounds, you're going to start to face harder and harder players. And if you're not looking comfortable with your own game against them early, then I feel like it's going to let him down later on. And that's really what happened in his loss last night.
Yeah, and I think the beauty of 5 sets is maybe it gives you an opportunity to quote unquote work your way into matches, and we've seen the top dogs do that all the time, but it adds up. And there's working your way into a match, and there's just looking bad at the beginning of matches. And I think we can say he looked quite off against Vasek and Volkan, right? And then even against Lehecka in the early stages, I don't think he was playing his best tennis, and the adjustments that Lehecka made and the lack of adjustments that Felix offered towards the end of that match was a bit shocking to me. Not to say that I expected his game to evolve that much on the mental side, but I think when I look at Felix and I look at Denis as well, like I didn't think Denis was that far away from Hubie Hurkacz in a tennis sense. On a mental sense, I thought they were miles apart. Like, I didn't think they were playing the same sport in the fifth set. And you could see it in what Denis was saying after the match in his post-match presser, and kind of acknowledging that mentally he was not there and he did not have that belief he needed to have to close out that match, even after coming from 2 sets down. And I think they're at different stages, even though they're close in age. But that to me was the biggest standout for the men, at least.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's Shapoval's biggest barrier, because I think he's a very, very talented player. And when he's kind of more carefree and playing his own game, then it's pretty hard to beat him. But yeah, that tends to be the times where he loses, is when he is miles apart mentally from his opponent. So yeah, I think with Shapo, I'm kind of in the same place that I always am. I'm just kind of waiting for him to get over that barrier, because once he does, and he can make it far consistently and maybe eventually get there one day. And then with Felix, to me, it was just like, he did show it mentally, I would say, like, especially playing those 5 setters for sure. Like, that has a big aspect to that. But yeah, I think just his level of tennis was just not good enough and not there yet. But it's a long season. It's a long tennis year. So I'm sure he's going to continue to improve as we go along. But yeah, kind of disappointing on the men's side. On the women's side, I don't really know what to think, because Bianca is still kind of working her way back. I think maybe I had more.
We're going to be saying this for 4 years down the road. Yeah, she's still working her way back. She's still getting back into it. It'll be 2030 and we'll still be saying this.
That's so funny. I think with her, I placed maybe too many expectations on her, just because I really thought that she could do something. Maybe I got a little bit too excited. And especially like in her first round match, she looked pretty great against Mikova. And then I was kind of surprised to see that second round loss. But I guess it's a learning experience for her right now. I don't know what to say about, like, I really don't know how to measure her. I think you're right. I don't want to stay for too long that she's just making her way back, because we're gonna get to a point where it's gonna be a year and she's been back already. So yeah, I'll be careful with that.
I was being harsh too. I don't really mean we'll be saying that in 2030, but
listen, we have to like April to say that.
Exactly. No, exactly. That is a far better take. But here's my thing. Like, I was exactly with you, because I watched the Bouzkova match and I'm like, holy cow, she's back. And like that to me is BB at the top level, where the seeding doesn't really matter. We're looking at the opponents on the court, or the competitors on the court, and she's clearly the better player. And that to me was a very positive sign. I think against Bouzka, with the match on her racket and potentially teeing up an Iga Swiatek, a beatable Iga Swiatek we later saw.
Yeah.
But someone that is at the top of the game, and I think someone that Bianca would relish playing, not just because she plays up to her competition, but because I think she relishes the fact of being on the biggest stage against the best player, because we've seen her play at her top level on that stage before. So just to set up that match, I think would have been important for her, just to see what it was like again and feel that feeling. So just to have that disappointment and lose the way she did to Buxa, hurts a lot. But I'm with you in the sense that, like, this is the year where we can make some more concrete evaluations, but we shouldn't make them now. We should probably wait till we're at least in the spring and then in the summer. And of course, those huge tournaments are coming up there. Tough draw, right? Also, you're unseeded. Yeah. You're going to get grouped. You're going to get drawed. And she did, because we were all looking at Iga, and then it was a qualifier who took her out. Leylah, really tough draw as well. And I mean, that first round match against Elise Cornet, you're looking at that as a definite landmine. But the reason she was in this spot, the reason that she ended up having to play Caroline Garcia in the second round, is because she was also unseeded. So it's a bit of a combo, Crina, of like the end of last year, kind of not being able to maintain the ranking, and then you get to the big first tournament of the year, and you find yourself with a pretty daunting task right out the gate.
Yeah, I was actually pretty nervous when she had her draw against Cornet again. It feels like Leylah always matches up with her in like the first round of a slam, which is, I don't know. I just feel it feels like deja vu every time. So I feel maybe that's why she's like learning how to get past her in the first round of a slam. But I thought her level was really great. And then after, when I saw that she matched up with Garcia, I think I felt a little bit of sympathy for Leylah, because I think it's just hard when you already had a tough first round, and then you go up against a player who's playing the best tennis of their life right now, and then you would have to be at like 200% to beat them. So in a way, I feel like I might go a little bit easier on Leylah's results just because of who she had to face. But yeah, like even in terms of Bianca with expectations, it is the first month of the year. I'm going to sound like a broken record, but a lot of stuff happens in the first month of the year that may not happen at the end of the year. And we may see like different developments, and maybe players who succeeded in January may not be succeeding in the middle of the year or at the end of the year. So I think the first kind of big tournament, the Australian Open even, is just kind of a good way for players to kind of measure where they're at and what they need to do to improve. And I think as much as it was disappointing for these Canadians, I feel like they can all take something from these experiences, and maybe it builds a little bit of character and makes it a little bit tougher for them to go out at the next slam or the next big tournament.
Yeah, I mean, a year ago, Ash Barty was still the world number one, and it looked like she was going to win all the slams, and then she stopped playing. So that's an extremely good point. I do think it's worth stating, though, and this is a credit to the WTA, because for a long time, I think the barb was that, there's too much parity on the WTA. The top seeds don't win enough. And I don't know if you've taken a look at the men's side the last few Grand Slams, but they've got some problems in that regard. And I would say that they do not have the same depth as the WTA. So if you are Leylah or Bianca, and I think Leylah is ranked 36th now and Bianca's 41, some of the names that are around those players, rankings-wise, Anisimova, Sloane Stephens, Magda Linette, who's having a great tournament, Danielle Collins, Donna Vekic, who's having a great tournament, Shelby Rogers, Putintseva. What I'm saying is, there's so many good players, Crina. Yeah,
you have former slam champions in that list right there, yeah.
So to find your way back and get back into those upper seeds, so you maybe have a better road, it's going to be really hard. Like, it's going to be really difficult to climb back up there, and it's going to take a lot of consistency. And in that regard, I wonder, who are you more confident in going forward? I think the safe pick would be Leylah, right? Because of the health aspect and maybe the fact that she's younger. But if you had to say on January 23rd, who you feel more confident in rising up the rankings, do you have a pick?
I think up till now I've been saying Bianca, just because I'm a Bianca truther and I believe in her tennis. But I don't know. Like, it's so hard. Like, I hate doing stuff like this because then I'll be like completely wrong if I make a choice. In terms of definitely in terms of age, Leylah's the best bet, and I think she has a tremendous amount of potential, as we've seen flashes over the last year or so. If you're including the men in this, I think I'm most confident in Felix out of all these four. I have been for a very long time. I just think he plays the best tennis out of all of them. Whether or not it happens, whether or not they fulfill that potential, we'll see. I think we're kind of in the place where with these four, they are all extremely talented and they have a lot of potential, but I don't think they're just ready yet, just based on where each of them are. And I'd rather use this year as like, maybe we place many expectations on them. I'd rather see more consistent growth, like just making it deep at tournaments, regardless of the level. Maybe getting titles that are not as big, but like, for example, like take Coco Gauff, for example, because I always refer back to her, where she's been really consistent in her very young career. She's made it far at slams, she's made it far at tournaments, but she hasn't really gotten over that barrier yet. And I think when she won the title, and I think it was Adelaide a few weeks ago, I thought that was super helpful for her. Moving forward, because you just kind of get a feel of what it takes to win a tournament, no matter how small or how big it is. And I think that's going to be more helpful for them down the road than to just kind of place these expectations like, oh my God, they're rising stars, let them win a slam right now. Because I feel like the more consistent growth is better, because if you can even look at Emma Raducanu, who she went on that miraculous run, won a slam. But if you look at where she is now, I wouldn't say I'm as much confident in her as I am in the Canadians, for example. Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah. And the funny thing is, like, I thought Emma Raducanu played pretty good against Coco Gauff. You're like, this player, if we took away the slam and like didn't know anything about her and just watched that match, I think we'd both be like, this person has a lot of potential, right? But it's that past performance is now, for better or for worse, kind of, it's on you, right? Like, that's going to be the thing that you carry around, and that's going to be something that people will compare it to. The other thing for me is, this is not breaking news, but Canada's not a huge country, and I do think you're looking at a place like the States, who for a while we were laughing. We're like, we got the better players. We're making deeper runs. We are the story of these tournaments, not the States. But I think you're seeing the just sheer mass of players they have and the resources available to them. And the fact that there were so many Americans on both sides of the draws, it's you're playing it by numbers, right? If you throw enough shit at the wall, some of it's going to stick. And in that case, you're seeing it now. And I think for the Canadians, we just don't have that many options, right? So we are hyper analyzing these guys, and we're really digging in and focusing in on the tweaks they need to make. And I mean, that's cool in the sense that we're paying attention and we're passionate, but it's also probably not the healthiest thing all the time.
Yeah, that's a really good point that you mentioned it, because it's like we kind of have these 4 stars. Obviously, there are others, but these are the 4 that kind of stick out because of their success so far. And yeah, you're right. Like we probably are kind of hyper analyzing them because of this. So that's a good point. I never thought of that.
I think the Felix loss will stick with me for a while. I think
he'll bounce back. He'll be okay.
He will. And it'll stick with him for far less than it'll stick with me. The reason, Crina, I say that is because last year it was all about those tough losses in Australia and then the French Open, right? And I thought, and they will help him. They helped him clearly at the end of last year when he won all those titles. But
yeah,
that aura, when you get to a slam, it's a whole different vibe, and they'll figure it out. They're still extremely young, but it's hard not to get caught up in it when you're watching them experience it live and experience the flips and swings, and seeing someone like Jiri Lehecka, who's going to be a really good player himself, be able to flip the switch and turn the match and just play a little more consistently than Felix. And here we are. But they'll be back, like you said. And also, Crina, you pointed this out, Gabby Dabrowski is still in this tournament playing doubles.
She is. Yes, her and her partner, Juliana Olmos, who are absolutely fantastic together. They defeated Bencic and Teichmann in round 2 in their last match. So that's pretty exciting. I am very happy that we still have a Canadian in the tournament. We can always count on Gabby, honestly. Like, she's awesome in doubles. And I'm excited to keep rooting for her, because not all the Canadians have had a disappointing tournament so far.
It's true. It's true. We got to show more love to doubles. I feel like we do a PSA every now and then. We're like, you know what? Doubles are great, everyone. But
I mean, Coco and Pegula help a lot with that, I feel like.
Big time. Big time. You're right. Okay. That's the Canadians. When we come back, part 2, we'll talk about the tournament at large, the storyline so far, and some major upsets when we come back on Open Era. Welcome back to the Open Air podcast. We're a week in to the Australian Open. Plenty of players have already left to get ready for the second part of the season, but those who remain, holy cow. We'll talk about Novak Djokovic in a second, Crina, but I think we got to talk about some of the men who have departed already. We'll start with Andy Murray. Something kind of sinister to me that it ended once again against RBA. 3 years after he kind of pseudo-retired the first time. But before that, Matteo Berrettini, Tanahashi Kokkinakis taken out in 5 sets. That Kokkinakis match ending well past 4 p.m. local time, as we talked about earlier. A lot happened last year, Crina, including Roger leaving and Roger and Rafa bawling their eyes out, and all the big 4 being there. And it really did feel like a goodbye of sorts. And we get to the Australian Open. Rafa has lost to every Tom, Dick, and Harry in the land, it seems, in the lead up, and doesn't look that good. And then, of course, he ends up losing early. Again, maybe fueling that era is done. It's time to move on. We're looking at the new wave of players. Before that happened, though, Andy Murray having this performance, first against Berrettini and then against Kokkinakis, was pretty damn cool. And I have to say, of the tennis documentaries I've watched recently, I think the one on him and his hip surgery and resurfacing is one people should check out. But that storyline to me is the one that will probably stay with me far beyond this tournament.
Absolutely. I remember just bawling my eyes out in 2019 when he was so emotional and talking about retiring. Because, like, I don't know, I just couldn't imagine closing a chapter on all these, like, big players like Rafa and Roger. And oh my God, when Roger retired, I don't think I've ever cried that much in my life. But yeah, that was an emotional day. I was like sending videos to my boyfriend. I was like, I can't control my tears. But yeah, just seeing Andy Murray come back the way he did, and like his quote about bumping into the doctor that said that he could never play professionally again. Right. I thought that was awesome. Like, way to like punch him in the face. But yeah, that was probably like one of the greatest matches I've ever seen in my entire life. And the fact that he took out Matteo Berrettini before that is an incredible accomplishment, because like, obviously we're going to talk about the Netflix curse a little bit later, but Matteo Berrettini is one of those up and coming players that has been playing really, really great tennis over the last couple of years.
Crina, here's a question. Is Matteo Berrettini an up and coming player anymore? Can we as a society move on from Matteo Berrettini?
He came up and then he kind of came down, and then yeah. Like, that's how I am thinking about it. So when I say up and coming, it's more like up and down kind of thing. That's fair though.
They're trying. They're trying damn hard to make him up and coming. But I thought the vibe of that match, you could tell early on that this wasn't going to go his way, even though it took quite a bit longer to suss that out. But it just had that aura as a classic Andy Murray match. And the fact that he has the most comebacks now in a 5-setter from down 2 sets ever is a testament to the fact that he's put himself in the situation so many times. As I saw on Twitter as well. I think Trenton Jocks had that tweet where it was like, him having this record is both a wonderful sign of how much of a fighter he is, and also a sign of how many trouble spots he got into based on his play. But it ended against RBA. I think having a takeaway about Andy Murray going forward is maybe the toughest thing, because all these other tournaments, for the most part, outside of the Grand Slams, he wouldn't have to play that long. And if he can sustain that level for as long as he can, he should win a lot of matches, right? But is that what this is about anymore? And I think that maybe the coolest thing, or the strongest feeling I'm leaving with, is that it doesn't really matter, Crina. I don't think it matters to him, right? About that. And maybe it shouldn't matter to us as much either.
Yeah, because if you think about it, he's not young anymore. It's not really like he has anything to prove in terms of winning a lot of matches this year. I think it's just a matter of giving whatever he's got forever, how much time he has left in his career. And it's just about his legacy. It's more like, to me, it's more the emotional part of it. I think it's going to be really hard to say goodbye to all of these legends. It's already been a tough year of doing that. And so, yeah, I think as long as we see like these like classic Andy Murray matches in this, like what more could you ask for to see them play? Obviously there's like a lot of issues with playing that long at a Grand Slam and like into the 4 a.m. hours. And I'm sure we'll talk about that as well. But just the fact that he performed that level of tennis and made it a show for us, and just kind of like riling up the crowd and like having all these great shots. I think, to me, that's more special than saying, okay, well, if he can play this well at a slam, then he should win this tournament. Because it's not about that. It's about his legacy at this point, and just enjoying him having fun on the court. Because at the end of the day, that's what matters, right?
It's true. And that doctor quip, or that comment, I think here's the tweet. Quote, 2 days ago, I randomly bumped into the doctor who in 2017 told me, quote, the good news is the problem you have in your hip can be fixed, but you won't be able to play professional sport again, unquote. I think we dispelled that myth the last 5 days. Good night. I love how this doctor is framed as a madman, though. It's like, hey, you'll have a great life. Like, you'll be okay, but you probably won't be able to play tennis anymore. It's like, well, F this guy. That's basically the takeaway. But no, that was great.
Well, it's funny because it's like you're telling Andy Murray that he's never going to play again for the rest of his life. Like the audacity. Come on. What's wrong with you, man?
Hey, Doc, maybe just hedge your bets and don't say that. Like, don't say anything in that regard. Like, hey, maybe, man, maybe. It's possible. That's terrific. Okay. There's Andy Murray. Great to see him and Muzza Magic at a slam. Let's talk about the Americans, Crina, because I mentioned the men guaranteed to, at the time of recording, I mean, Seb Korda is already in there. Seb Korda having a massive tournament. But everywhere you look on both sides of the draw, there's a ton of American flags. Blake Shelton, I keep calling him Blake Shelton. I blame my time watching The Voice on that. But Ben Shelton, JJ Wolf, one of them will be a slam quarterfinalist. Tommy Paul looks like arguably the best American to watch. I think he is the best American to watch for me, play style wise, on the men's side. And then on the women's side, I mean, Jess Pegula, arguably the favorite after watching what we have so far this tournament. The women have carried the slack for a while, Crina. I mean, Madison, I feel like people like Madison Keys don't get their due. I mean, Sloane Stephens, of course, but these people who have consistently made deep runs, Coco Gauff now taking that mantle, Danielle Collins last year making a run at the Australian Open. We've got Pegula now, but the American men had been poor, to say the least, and maybe the cream of the crop at a certain point was your Jack Sox or your Steve Johnsons or maybe your John Isners, but
your Riley Opelkas.
Your Riley Opelkas. What's the commonality between all those guys? Not that fun to watch them play, I would say.
Yeah.
These guys, though, I quite enjoy watching them. I'm not ashamed to admit it, Crina. I like watching these guys.
Absolutely. I think it's so fun. And even like Taylor Fritz as well. Just because there's always been questions around, okay, so we know the American women are good. We had Serena and Venus be the best players in the world for so long. And then you still have a bunch of talent after Serena retired and Venus is kind of not playing as much as she used to. But on the men's side, there was always that question. There was like, okay, well, who do we have here and what kind of potential do they have? I think Taylor Fritz always kind of had that potential, but there were a lot of questions around him. I used to frame him actually in the same way that I used to frame Milos Raonic like years ago, in terms of potential and expectations. But I think that he's more than surpassed them now. Even though he's also fallen victim to the
Milos walked so Taylor could run is what happened.
Exactly. Perfect way to put it. But yeah, now like Ben Shelton to me is one of my favorite stories of the Australian Open. The fact that this was his first time on a plane leaving the country and he's very close to being a quarterfinalist. Like it's very possible that he will be at the Australian Open. That's such a fun story. Like that's so exciting because of how young he is as well. Like that makes you very excited for the future. And watching Korda yesterday too was just like the cherry on top. Like it was absolutely fantastic. But I'm very excited for the future of American men's tennis. I like seeing them there. Like honestly, like I'm all for the growth and talent of North American tennis in general. I think, like the sport is very international. So like it's nice to see, maybe that's like the North American bias a little bit, but it's nice to see like our side, putting up a bit of a fight and be like, yeah, we're here too. We're good.
And putting on my sinister marketing hat, which I don't love to do, but kind of need the Americans to be good.
Yeah.
In terms of the health of the sport and where we're going looking forward and just taking a look at who has been promoted or who has been targeted to promote, it would make sense to look stateside and hope that some of these players can rise above and become the next faces of the sport, because it would help a ton in terms of keeping tennis amongst the other sports in terms of like brand awareness or people knowing who these people are. So I think that is a positive. And then taking off my marketing hat because I hate having it on and I feel uneasy now.
It's so true. It's so true because
true though, right?
if I think about like all of the people that I know or all of my friends who aren't really tennis fans, and I wouldn't even categorize them as casual fans either. But whenever the slams come around, the players that were influential and caught their attention were like Naomi Osaka, Serena Williams, Coco Gauff now is one of the biggest attention drawers to them because they want to rally behind her. So I think having more players like that is going to be super important to attracting more tennis fans as well, and not only just like growing the sport in general.
It's well said. Ben Shelton, fascinating. I think his dad is a coach, used to be a player as well, but he didn't want to play tennis for a long time. And like listening to him talk about that, it was very endearing. And you could call him a Nepo baby if you want. I mean, more than half the people in the sport are Nepo babies. So we got to check ourselves probably slightly. But his story's awesome. Yeah. And there's a big difference. There's a huge difference between being a serve bot and being someone who is worth watching. Like Jensen Brooksby's not a serve bot, but I don't like watching him very much. But I think for the most part, there is quite a few Americans worth watching on the men's side, and they're having a hell of a tournament. I mentioned Jess Pegula, Crina, who her dad is obviously the owner of the Buffalo Bills. She's watching them. She's rock solid. I think consistency is not the biggest eye catcher, and it's probably lower on the list in terms of things that we crave from our star athletes, but she has been. I think that consistency is even more stark now with Iga Swiatek not being in this tournament anymore. I think one of the biggest stories so far is Iga losing to someone who, if you want to talk about not getting a fair shake or having circumstances conspire against you in a negative way, Elena Rybakina won Wimbledon and basically got no attention or love for it at all, for a variety of reasons. But she won that tournament and was then basically ushered to the outer edges of the US Open courts and given no preferential treatment. You wouldn't know she's a slam winner. You will know she is, though. She reminded everyone by absolutely thrashing Iga with an incredible display of power tennis, Crina. That was something. But that was a seismic match to me because Iga's Iga. Like, this is someone who's still been consistently delivering bakery breadsticks to people before this match. And Rybakina, who, God, like I still feel bad about what happened at Wimbledon and since. So I think like in terms of like an FU match, this was something to see.
Oh, absolutely. I loved it. I was rooting for her the whole time. No shade to Iga. I love Iga with all my heart, but man, I really wanted her. I tweeted, I was like, from the parking lot to the quarterfinals. I was like, and it's funny because at Wimbledon, she beat Simona Halep in the semifinals, and you'd think that would turn me against her just because I'm a Halep fan, but it didn't. Like, I love her so much. I think her being so like quiet and reserved, I don't know. Like, I really respect her a lot, and she's kind of dealt with a lot of disrespect towards her and has handled it pretty well, I would say. And so I think her game, and I always say this to people, is like, I first took notice of her when she played against Serena Williams, and I noticed that she was kind of one of the only players that could get close to matching Serena's power. Yeah. And that was when I was kind of like, okay, she's going to be good. Like we need to keep an eye on her. And so now obviously we've seen that come through, and she's become probably one of the most powerful players on tour to play against. And so I think this was a really huge win for her. Can I tell you something? Because before the tournament, I made a bracket, and I actually had Jessica Pegula winning the whole thing. I had her winning the whole thing against I put Bencic in the final, and
good.
I know. I was like, whew, at least the one pick that's actually going well so far. Because I think after watching the United Cup and just kind of seeing the way Pegula was being super consistent, like you said, and just playing the way she does, because like she doesn't necessarily always play an exciting style of tennis, but it's the kind of tennis that you win with. It's really smart tennis. So I don't know. I just had this feeling. I was like, I think she might be able to go all the way. And I think I had Rybakina making it pretty far too. I can't remember who I chose to beat Iga. Maybe it was Rybakina. I can't remember. But yeah, I like Iga a lot, but I think it's really nice to see now that her level, or like her dominance, I would say, is kind of tapering off just a little bit. And it's nice to see some of the other players kind of rising to the test and being able to match that, because now we're going to see even more parity than we did before. Because you could argue that it was kind of heading towards an Iga dominant year last year with all like that 37 match winning streak that she went on and the 2 Grand Slams. So it's nice to see more players kind of asserting their level as well.
I feel it. Give me a Caroline Garcia, Elena Ostapenko final. I would kill for that. I'd absolutely go for that. Elena Ostapenko, she's her. She's her, by the way. She is doesn't give a damn about anything anyone's opinion. Beats Coco Gauff to the chagrin, I'm sure, of TV executives around the world. But that hurdle you mentioned, Crina, about Coco, like making it to now a consistent level where she's on the cusp of being a regular contributor in the second week of slams. It doesn't get easier. And you're playing as a former slam winner who's seen everything, who's been involved in probably any type of tennis situation.
And I remember that Ostapenko slam final against Simona Halep. So
does Ostapenko. And I think she reminds everyone of that when she can. And to see her perform like that.
Yeah.
China also on the men's side, multiple entrants, but on the women's side, having quite a few players make deeper runs. That was cool to see. We got Aryna Sabalenka still in. She's going to play Bencic, probably done by the time you listen to this, but
that'll be a great one. I'm excited.
Yeah, I think I've picked Sabalenka, so I feel like that pick is looking okay so far. I agree with you. It's funny, the Iga streak last year and then consolidating at the US Open, I think I viewed that as a positive thing, and that more of a, hey, this is something you deserve for bossing it this entire year. And I know you already had one slam, but this was kind of like this was your general achievement for the whole year, and you deserved this slam. Coming into this year, I wanted to see who could raise their game to challenge Iga, and we're looking at it now and seeing that there's more than a handful of people that can. And we probably always had that belief based on the fact that we rave about the depth in the WTA all the time. But to see it actually happen on the big stages like we did in that match with Rybakina, that was cool. So I'm with you there.
And Pegula beat her at the United Cup too. So I think that was kind of where I was like, okay, Pegula's going to do well this year.
All right. Do you want to end the Netflix curse? We'll end there. They're all done. They're all out. First of all, what'd you think? What'd you think of Breakpoint?
I quite enjoyed it. I think once you get past the fact that this is not for like really diehard tennis fans or people, then you'll see like you kind of understand the vision behind it. I know a lot of people are complaining that they don't really go into the rules of tennis that much or like the structures of the games, but honestly, like to me, it was about the human side because like that's how you're going to attract more viewers. They want to know who the players are. They want to know what they're going through, what their stories are. And I think they did a really good job of doing that. I think there were a couple moments that even me as like a diehard didn't even realize, like the moment with Taylor Fritz at Indian Wells where he almost didn't play in the final and like he was fighting his entire team about it. And he ended up winning the entire tournament. So like, it's just stuff like that was really cool to see behind the scenes. I think they did a lot of the mental health stuff really well too with like Paula Badosa, Maria Sakkari. Like I really thought they nailed some of those parts of tour that maybe you don't fully appreciate or understand when you're just keeping up with matches and things like that. So it was, to me, I really enjoyed seeing the more human side. And I really liked seeing the players open up because honestly, you don't always get that. You can only get so much from like press conferences and things like that. So just to see them, you know, be vulnerable and like just be able to share those experiences with us, like I didn't take that for granted. And I thought to myself, I can't believe the second part is coming out in June. Why do I have to wait this long? Because I binged it all before the Australian Open started because like there's no way I'm going to have time to watch it during the tournament. So I enjoyed it. I thought it was a good watch. Yeah,
and I think I'm with you. I didn't particularly care for the first couple episodes. And I think it's also
it starts off slow, but I feel like it got better with every episode.
And like I kind of knew Nick Kyrgios' story pretty well, you know? Like I don't think there's that much. He's not that much of an enigma, folks. Like it's not some impossible Rubik's Cube to solve. He's an Australian bro.
They love the bad boy narrative.
They do. Yeah. The Maria Sakkari stuff, like her confidence level.
She's like, I retired for 4 days.
But what do we see in her match when she exited? I'm like, okay, yeah, there's all those things that continue to be things that she has to deal with. So I think that was fascinating. No, you're right. And I don't think you're going to convince people to follow tennis by showing them that much on-court stuff. You're right. I think there's a human element that they have to examine and get these people to be more important than just tennis players. And they were getting to that. I mean, I didn't have a very strong opinion of Casper Ruud till I saw him berating those practice court officials, and now I hate him. Crina. So thank you, thank you, Netflix.
I thought that part was so funny because they made it so dramatic, and I was like, I feel like this is a little bit scripted. Like just a little.
He literally got his dad to call people for him, and I thought, really, Casper, you're gonna get murdered by Rafa. You are going to get smoked.
Listen, but then I don't know if you saw like the clips they posted on social media where they told the players to do the Netflix like tune, like the bum, and then there's just Casper Ruud going for like 3 minutes, and the other players are just like bum, and then there's just Casper, like they edited him throughout the video just continuing to let out one and he like, oh my god, it's so funny. I feel like if you hate him, just go watch that, and I feel like your feelings will change back.
I used to defend him on the show a lot from Simon, who was a Capital One Casper Ruud disliker, but how the mighty have fallen. Okay, we're gonna get into parting shots, Crina. You told us on the women's side. On the men's side, Novak. I don't want to be the conspiracy guy, and some may call me a Novak hater. I've been called that before, but I'm trying to be better in this regard.
That's okay.
How much do you think this hamstring's a thing? Because I mean, Grigor Dimitrov played quite well for someone who lost in straight sets, but Novak was getting pushed around quite a bit, and I didn't expect Grigor to be able to do that.
Mm-hmm. I think it definitely is a bit of an issue, which is why I'm not as confident in Novak winning the whole thing like I was pre-tournament. But I don't know. The thing with Novak is like, there can be something wrong, or like he can be like maybe not on his best level, but like he's just so good anyway that he'll find a way to win these matches. And that's what I'm like low-key afraid of a little bit, depending on like who he runs into. When the hamstring was like bothering him and he was like, he made those comments in the presser, I originally went, okay, it's Medvedev's time to shine, and then Medvedev lost. And so now I'm a little bit like, I don't really know what's going to happen. I think they're definitely, it could be hurting him. Like it could affect him, but at the same time, I'm done with like, not like with counting these players out. Like I can't count Novak out at any point.
Yeah. And I think the next couple matches will be arguably the most difficult task now going forward. Because if he can get to the final, I like his odds of just mentally overpowering whoever he's playing on one leg or 1.5 legs. I could see that happening.
Yeah, because he plays De Minaur next, so that's a tough one.
And then possibly Holger Rune, I think Holger Rune is my number 2. Yeah. I think if you had to ask me who my power rankings are on the men's side right now, it's Novak, Stefanos, Holger Rune.
Okay. Yeah, that's he's a sneaky one, so I could definitely see that.
All right, we'll leave it there. When we come back to wrap up this week's show, it's Parting Shots on Open Era. Welcome back to the Open Era podcast. Wrapping up today's show with Parting Shots. Crina, I wanted to highlight the story that I saw. Apparently big news in Australia. Australian Open anger grows over disgusting ball kids treatment. Quote, are we in a Dickens novel? Apparently, it was found out, I guess, or like a revelation in Melbourne that ball kids at the other slams are compensated. So at the US Open, you get $15 an hour, which is quite a decent wage. Wimbledon plays a flat rate of $351 a week. I'm not sure what the French Open does, but the Australian Open doesn't pay the kids. They get a gift bag and a food allowance. The process to be selected as a ball kid is a year-long thing.
Oh my God.
So not just like you show up and you get the gig. They reclassified the job as a volunteer position in 2008, meaning that the children were no longer paid the $40 they had traditionally been allocated prior to 2009. One of those things where, you're watching the Andy Murray match. You're watching him play Thanasi Kokkinakis till the early hours of the morning, and you're seeing these children running around at 4 a.m. Like, what do they have to do tomorrow? Do they have school or stuff? Or like, what's going on?
This is madness.
I couldn't shake that from my head as I'm reading that they're not getting paid.
Oh my God. No, yeah, this is ridiculous. Like what are we doing? It's 2023. How can this still be possible? I can't even wrap my mind around this because I'm like, these kids are out with those players too. They're running in the heat. They're running in the late hours of the night. Kids need a certain amount of hours of sleep per night. And if they're up till 4 a.m. working on the Andy Murray match, that ain't happening. And there's so many things wrong with this. No, they need to be financially compensated. I'm surprised I didn't see more of this. Like, honestly, like when I saw it in the show notes this week, I was like, this is the only time I'm hearing about this. Yeah. Which is crazy.
I think it became like a bit of a firestorm locally, but it is one of those, it's funny because like tennis to me it's a bourgeois sport. It's especially so at Grand Slams where like the haves and the have-nots are on wide display, and it is like a tribute to excess, and there's just so many like frills and so many additional things, and you can see why these tournaments have so much power because they're way different than anything else on the normal tour. And then you get to something like this where the people who are helping the show move and continue to run smoothly are forgotten actors. And it's just kind of par for the course in terms of everything else we see, really, whether it be in sports or in society as a whole. So, yeah, a Dickens novel, I'd say so.
Oh, my God. That quote is, wow.
Moving on. Novak Djokovic, extremely upset with Eurosport, the European broadcaster who has the rights for the Australian Open. I think long story short, and I had to, Crina, forgive me if I bottle this, but I had to dig into this because it didn't make much sense to me. But apparently Eurosport has contracted out their social media division to a marketing firm. So a marketing firm is running all their tweets, they're clipping the highlights, they're doing all that stuff in social that we see all the time. Ho-hum. There was a moment in Novak's second round match where it seems like Novak is like getting around the rules or is somehow circumventing the toilet break rule. And it's clipped in a way to make him look pretty bad. So Novak goes into his press conference and just lays into Eurosport. He's mad as hell. And it made me think, Crina, isn't it kind of weird that Novak, who by all accounts has been welcomed back with open arms, got some wonderful ovations. There was that heckler who was yelling at him while drunk, which was not good. But overall, it's been a nice return.
That happened a lot this tournament.
It has
problematic, yeah.
But like it's been good. Like overall, it's been a nice return. I think it was weird to me that he's kind of decided to use his energy for this.
It's weird to you. It's unsurprising to me. I don't know how to phrase this properly. I'm just not surprised. Like, also, it's a bit weird to me that he wouldn't just like ignore something like that. Because like, if he's not actually getting penalized or anything, then what do you care? Like all these media outlets and things like that, they're always going to be like, there's always going to be posts like this or like articles posted like trying to push a certain narrative on these players. So at some point you got to be like, okay, this doesn't matter. If this actually doesn't affect me, then why am I ranting about it? And you're just giving it more attention. At least that's the way I see it. Clearly, if the social channels have been bought by a marketing firm, clearly they have an ulterior agenda and are trying to do something. So to me, it's like, okay, whatever at this point. I also just find Toiletgate pretty funny in general, with like Tsitsipas and Novak, and I even during the Andy Murray match where they were like they're not allowed to go to the bathroom. I was like, this is insane. Like, you have to let them go to the bathroom. Like, I don't know what kind of human rights violations this is, but it's just nuts to me. I was like, if I had to go to the bathroom, there is nothing that's stopping me. Like, no, like I'm running straight for it. So I don't know. I just find the whole thing like very, I don't know what the proper word is for it, but it just feels very odd to be arguing about a basic right, in my opinion.
Well, we had our fun We had our fun. We made our jokes. We're like, haha, Stefanos is getting coached. But what we should have acknowledged is exactly that. Like it got ruined for everyone. And now it's just assumed you are cheating. Anytime someone has to use the bathroom, it's like, well, that person doesn't need to use anything.
And like, there are ways, like when I was in high school and we were doing exams and you had to go to the bathroom, like a teacher would go with you and like, they just accompany you and stand there and make sure like you weren't cheating. So I'm like,
Tylee, wake up. Like, Jesus.
Like they could just do that. Like if it worked in high school, it should work in pro sports, right?
On that note, I saw the PTPA put out a statement about the late matches. No real action plan, but they're like, this is bad and we should change it, which I think is adding to the chorus. Everyone agrees, but
yeah,
TV money. Like they won't put one match on primetime because they want more content to show. I don't know how they get around changing that. So that's kind of where I netted out there, which again, putting my marketing hat on, which is bad. So I imagine the PTPA as they get not bigger, but they kind of build on the fact that they actually have players involved now. Crina, they can actually advocate for some changes regarding these things because this is what a union should fight for. Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah, it's ridiculous at this point. Like it's at the end of the day, and I don't want to minimize it, but it's just tennis. So just let them just cut off. You have a curfew, cut it off at a certain point, or like no, don't start the matches so late. Let them go to the bathroom. Let them change. Like all these things are so. It's just so odd to me that there's like all these rules that make no sense because you're not. In a way, like obviously, okay, the Andy Murray match was great because Andy Murray is a legend and he's pretty good at the tennis thing. But long matches like that, at some point you are sacrificing the level of the quality of tennis. So I don't know, like if the point is to get more eyes on it, if people are watching bad tennis on TV at like 4 a.m. in the morning, they're going to turn it off. They're not like, you know what I mean? Like it's just weird. It's about what you're prioritizing. And to me, they're not prioritizing the right things right now.
It's well said. Quickly, ESPN covering the tournament remotely, which I guess was announced a while ago, but I didn't realize that was going to be a thing. So I was caught a bit off guard when I saw that. There's some people who are there, but they're there in like a dual capacity. Like I know Darren Cahill's there and Pam Shriver's there, but they're coaching players too. So that kind of explains it. It's a lot different, Crina. It's a lot different. I'm not a huge fan in general, usually, of the coverage Grand Slam time, but I don't know. It's not the same.
Yeah, and I saw a lot of people complaining that the matches are on ESPN Plus and not actually like on the main TV channels, which I'm sure plays a factor into that they're covering it remotely, which is like so odd to me because like it's a Grand Slam, like it should be on TV. And like I know like I have my complaints about the way it gets broadcast here in Canada, but to be fair, they're still playing matches like on the TSN channels, like on the TV channels. So I don't know. I just find it very odd because like, how are you supposed to get the biggest audience by just putting it on your streaming platform and not putting any effort into actually covering the event? Because like a lot of tennis fans are actually older, like an older demographic. Yeah. So you're going to be wanting to put it on the TV channels because that's where the demographic is. So it is a little bit odd with like this move to streaming services as well too. So it's kind of like finding a balance between that, I guess. It's a little bit of a weird time to be in terms of TV and broadcasting and streaming and remote productions and things like that. But yeah, I just feel like it also, I know we've been talking about the marketing hat all day long, but at some
Don't put it on. Don't put it on, Crina. Don't put it on. It's bad.
I won't put it on. I'll put it on the table and talk about it a little. But like, they got to think about it that way too. Like, how are you marketing this properly? And what is your plan? Because it just feels like very unorganized.
There is a deep dive, so to speak, in the New York Times about that very topic and how there's some jockeying between various parties, including a venture capital firm, which, yeah, that's as ominous as you want it to sound. It is ominous, but there's people floating around that are trying to get their their hands on things and do exactly that, cause some disruption and change the way this game is promoted. It's fascinating to me, and I wonder if they'll see some pickup. They had a ton of American men do really well. I wonder how many people were able to see those guys, based on what we just mentioned. Finally, Crina, we'll end it here. You mentioned it, Simona Halep super fan.
My favorite part.
Super fan. How are you doing? How's the last few months been for you?
It has been not great. A lot of people have asked me about this situation because I am Romanian as well as Canadian, and I'm a Halep super fan. So to put it lightly, I miss watching her very much. It's just not the same, and I know, like, recently, like before the suspension, before all of that came out, I was like kind of in the back of my mind, like, I feel like she's gonna retire soon, or like I feel like we're kind of getting to the end of her career, and so I didn't want to get used to not seeing her anymore, and then the suspension kind of like fast forwarded that for me. I'm not really sure what's going on with it on that end, because a lot of the sources that have come out, like the reports, I don't really know how legitimate they are. Like, I saw a couple of things about her supplements being traced with the drug that they found in her system. But I don't really know until anything like official comes out. I don't really know how to measure this situation. I'm hoping something comes out soon, because even if it is technically fine, whatever happens, she's still going to be suspended for a certain amount of time, whether that's like 9 months, 4 months, whatever it is, until she comes back. And so I feel like the quicker we get the news out about what happens, then maybe the faster I can deal with either never seeing her play again or just waiting another half a year or however much longer it is. But I don't know. I think if you want my opinion on what I think, obviously I don't know her at all. But based on what like Darren has said and what people around her have said, like the Romanian players have really rallied around her, and even Alizé Cornet, who she's very good friends with, has also come out to support her. They all kind of saying the same thing, where like she would have never taken a substance like that willingly or knowingly. And I've said it multiple times. I think when she completely changed her team last year and hired Patrick as her coach and then fired all the Romanian guys on her team, I was like, I don't know if this is the best move. Like, I honestly, like, it made me a little bit uncomfortable, but then it seemed like it was working for a while. I mean, she did really well at Wimbledon. She made the semifinals. Obviously, she won here in Toronto before that news came out. So I don't really know where the situation came from, if it has anything to do with the fact that she did change her team. I'm not sure what happened there, but yeah, I don't think that she would have done it willingly either, because to me, it just doesn't make sense at this point. And like, based on her track record and like how she's been, like how she's worked her entire career, it doesn't make sense to me in my mind that this would happen on purpose. So yeah, I'm just hoping that everything comes out, whether it's good or bad or in between, so that we can just move on and I can look forward to when she takes the court again, or I can just grieve her career and just be content that I saw her win in Toronto, like in person. And that was like my first time like being in person at a final, and the fact that she won. So yeah, that's kind of where I stand.
Damn.
I know that was a lot. My emotional trauma onto you.
Because like I'm a fan too. Like I've seen the Romanians show out at the tennis complex at York quite a few times, whether it be for like Cristea or Halep, and it's a vibe. It's awesome to see.
And I'm sure I've been there for a lot of those too.
Yeah, so. It's great. Right? I think the way you said, like the character witnesses and the character references she has, and people have won this appeal before. You're right.
Yeah.
I think it won't be 3 years. Maybe it'll be whatever long it is, and we'll see if where her dedication to the sport is at that point. But
she's still training. She's been posting on her Instagram like every single day the last like month or so, and so she's still training. I know she's in Dubai right now, I think. So yeah, she's still training. So I'm assuming that means that she thinks it's gonna go somewhat well.
This is a little too gossipy, but did her marriage end when she joined?
Yeah, they got
Patrick?
divorced. It wasn't then. It was actually like quite recently, like so around the time the suspension news came out. She also came out and said, I'm gonna put these rumors to rest because I'm seeing a lot of like gossipy columns and things like that. We decided to end our marriage and blah blah blah. So yeah, that came around, like that's pretty recent because they were still together when she was in Toronto, like when she won Toronto, because he was there in Toronto. So it happened pretty recently.
Well, free Simona. Innocent Simona, innocent. Probably. We'll
That'll be the name of the episode. # free Simona.
Innocent. Yes. Crina, thank you so much for joining us. Where can we find your stuff online?
Yeah, so you can follow me on Twitter at CrinaMM. That's pretty much where all my content goes, where I'm kind of posting what I'm doing. But this was a ton of fun. Thanks for having me on. I love talking about tennis for an hour any day of the week.
No, thank you. Door is always open. Thanks so much, Crina, for joining us. And yeah, follow her on Twitter in general, not just for tennis stuff. I think sports in general, and also killing it in terms of what her and her team are creating on a daily basis. So wholly recommend you check out her stuff, their stuff. A reminder, we are on patreon.com/open era. Join us there, get the show ad free, get it early on Sundays. Plus join us on the Discord where we're chatting tennis all the time, having a great time in there. This past week, when I wake up for my 9 p.m. slumber, I'm back locked in to what I missed thanks to our Discord chat. So thank you to everyone in there, and join us on Patreon. You can log on there and talk tennis all the time. We're also on Twitter at Open Era Pod. Also, if you'd be so kind, a rating or a review wherever you get this podcast would be wonderful for us as we try to get it into more people's ears. For producer Greg on the ones and twos, and for Crina, thank you so much for listening to Open Era. We'll talk to you next week.